The illusion of control. You believe your thoughts are yours, that your decisions come from logic, reason, and intention. Every day, you move through life assuming you are the one in control. You choose what to say, how to react, what to believe. At least, that's what it feels like. But there are moments that don't fit this idea. Moments when you react too quickly, when you say something you didn't plan, when you repeat a behavior you promised yourself you would never repeat again. And afterward, you sit there wondering what just happened. Why did I do that? That question matters more than most people realize, because it reveals something uncomfortable. There is a gap between what you think is controlling you and what actually is. From my perspective, that gap is where the truth begins. Most people ignore it. They explain it away. They blame stress, circumstances, other people. Anything that keeps the illusion intact. Because the alternative is harder to accept. The idea that you are not fully in control of your own mind, that your thoughts might not be as independent as you believe, that your reactions might not be as intentional as they feel, that something else, something deeper, is influencing you behind the scenes. And the more you think about it, the more you start noticing patterns. You say the same kinds of things in similar situations. You feel the same emotions triggered by familiar events. You fall into the same mental loops again and again, even when you know better. This is not random, it's structured, it's consistent, and most importantly, it's invisible. Because if it were obvious, you would have seen it already. You would have stopped it, you would have changed it, but you haven't. Not because you're weak, not because you're incapable, but because you're looking in the wrong place. You're trying to control the surface, while something deeper is already controlling you. The hidden system. There is a part of your mind that does not ask for permission. It does not introduce itself. It does not explain its intentions, yet it influences almost everything you do. From the outside, your behavior looks consistent. It looks like personality, like identity, like who you are. But beneath that surface, there is a system operating quietly, shaping your reactions before you even notice them. This system is not new. It has been forming for years. Every experience you've had, every emotional moment, every repeated thought, every belief you accepted without questioning, all of it contributed to building patterns inside your mind. Patterns that now run automatically. And the more they repeat, the stronger they become. At some point they stop feeling like patterns, they start feeling like you. That's where things become difficult, because when a pattern feels like identity, you don't question it. You defend it. You justify it. You assume it is natural. But natural does not mean conscious. From my perspective, this is where most people lose control without realizing it. They are not choosing freely. They are responding based on programming they never examined. And the system doesn't need to force you. It only needs to guide you. A small emotional reaction here, a subtle bias there, a familiar thought loop repeating in the background. Over time, these small influences shape your decisions, your relationships, your habits, your entire life direction. And you rarely notice it happening, because it doesn't feel external. It feels internal. It feels like your voice, your thoughts, your choices. But what if it isn't? What if what you call yourself is only part of the picture? And what if the part you don't see is the one making the decisions? That possibility is uncomfortable, but ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. Automatic patterns. Most of your reactions are not as deliberate as you think. They feel immediate because they are. They feel natural because they've been repeated enough times to become automatic. You don't decide to feel irritated in certain situations. It just happens. You don't carefully choose every word in emotional moments. They come out on their own. You don't consciously build every habit you follow daily. You simply repeat what has already been established. From my perspective, this is where the illusion of control becomes most convincing, because everything feels like a choice. But if you look closer, you begin to notice something different. The same triggers create the same reactions. The same environments produce the same thoughts. The same internal dialogue appears again and again, almost word for word, like a script you've memorized without realizing it. That's not freedom. That's repetition. And repetition, over time, becomes identity. You begin to say things like, "That's just how I am," or "I've always been like this." But what you're really describing are patterns that were never examined, patterns that formed under specific conditions and continued because they were never questioned. This is where the mind becomes efficient. It stops asking, it stops analyzing, it simply executes. And that efficiency can look like control, but it isn't. It's automation. You are not actively choosing every reaction. In many cases, you are following a sequence that has already been decided by past experiences and reinforced over time. And the more you follow it, the less aware you become of it, until one day you feel stuck, repeating the same cycles, facing the same problems, feeling like you're moving but not progressing. That's not coincidence, that's structure, and until you recognize it, you will continue living inside it, thinking it's freedom. Why you don't see it? If this system is so powerful, why don't you see it? Why doesn't it feel obvious that something deeper is influencing your thoughts and actions? Because it doesn't oppose you directly. It aligns with the version of yourself you already believe in. From my perspective, this is what makes it so effective. Your mind doesn't need to convince you of something new. It only needs to reinforce what you already accept as true. It works within your identity, not against it. And because of that, it feels natural, comfortable, familiar, even when it limits you. There are parts of your mind that don't fit that identity, thoughts that contradict it, emotions that feel inconvenient, impulses that don't align with how you see yourself. Instead of exploring them, you ignore them. You push them aside, you label them as irrelevant or unnecessary, and in doing that you create a blind spot. That blind spot becomes the perfect place for unconscious patterns to grow. Because what you don't examine continues without resistance. It doesn't need to hide aggressively, it only needs you to look away. And you do. Not because you lack intelligence, but because awareness requires discomfort. It requires questioning things you've always assumed were true. It requires seeing parts of yourself that don't match the image you prefer. It requires accepting that control might not be where you thought it was. Most people avoid that. They stay at the surface. They manage behavior without understanding it. They control appearances without addressing causes. And as long as they do that, the deeper system remains untouched, unquestioned, unchanged, which means still in control. The consequence. When you don't understand what drives your mind, the consequences don't appear immediately. They build slowly, through repetition, through patterns that feel small at first but grow over time. You make decisions that seem right in the moment, but lead you back to the same situations. You react in ways that feel justified, but later create regret. You follow habits that feel automatic, but slowly shape your life in directions you didn't intend. And because each moment feels isolated, you don't see the connection. From my perspective, this is where confusion begins. You start questioning your results, but not your process. You wonder why things don't change, even when you try. You feel like you're putting in effort, but not getting closer to where you want to be. And eventually you begin to doubt yourself. Not in a dramatic way, but subtly. You hesitate more. You second-guess your decisions. You feel less certain about your direction. And over time, that uncertainty becomes part of your experience. This is the real cost of unconscious patterns, not chaos, not failure, but lack of clarity. Because when you don't understand what is driving your behavior, you can't predict it. And when you can't predict it, you can't trust it. So you rely on control. You try to force discipline. You try to suppress reactions. You try to stay in control at the surface level. But underneath, the same system continues operating. And the more you fight it without understanding it, the more exhausting it becomes, until eventually you feel stuck, not because there is no way forward, but because the path you're on is being shaped by something you haven't fully seen yet. Awareness is control. Real control does not come from forcing your thoughts. It does not come from suppressing your reactions or trying to eliminate parts of your mind that feel uncomfortable. From my perspective, real control begins with awareness, not passive awareness, not simply noticing what happens, but actively observing your patterns, your reactions, your internal dialogue without immediately identifying with them. This is where something changes. You start seeing the difference between what happens in your mind and who you are. That separation matters, because once you can observe a pattern, you are no longer fully inside it. You are not being carried by it automatically. You are looking at it. And in that moment there is space. Space to pause, space to question, space to choose. Carl Jung described this idea in a simple but powerful way. He suggested that what remains unconscious continues to direct your life, and you experience it as if it were fate. Not because it is fate, but because you never saw it clearly enough to change it. The moment something becomes conscious, it loses part of its power. Not completely, not instantly, but enough to create a difference, and that difference grows. You begin to recognize your triggers before they take over. You notice patterns before they repeat fully. You understand reactions instead of being controlled by them. And slowly, control shifts, not through force, but through clarity. You don't eliminate the system, you understand it. And in doing that, you stop being controlled by what you couldn't see. Not perfectly, but consciously. And that is where real change begins.